So we've got our user. The next step is we have to set GitHub up appropriately. There's two pieces of this. One is writing the GitHub action, and then two is giving away our secrets that we created for that user. Now, for the most part, I have a set of handcrafted YAML files that I bring to different projects, this being one of them that basically takes care of this. I'm going to type it out in the next little piece, mostly so I can talk about each piece and give us time to reflect on it. This is in the notes. I dropped it in the chat as well. I would probably just copy and paste it. The one other thing is if you've got the AWS CLI and you need to get your distribution from somewhere else, you can actually run this to see all of your CloudFront distributions. Since it's a new account, you likely have one. So that will get you that EQ, whatever, distribution ID that you had before. But I will go ahead and kind of pull this in to my code base, and then we can kind of talk about it as I type it. But like I said, the chance of me messing something up slightly along the way, so y'all have to let me know if you see me make an obvious typo while I'm chatting. But we can talk about each of the different pieces of this as we go through it. Sound good? OK. So there's two ways you can go about doing this. You go into GitHub. And let's actually bring this. We'll go over here. And we'll go into Actions. And you can set up a workflow for yourself. And let's go ahead and let's make the font bigger for everyone involved. And if it doesn't let me do that, then I'll do it in my text editor. OK, so your GitHub workflows live in a directory called .github/workflows, and you need at least one called your main.yaml. Right? So if you have more than one, I have one for the main kind of deployment process. I have one that just does linting and prettier formatting and stuff like that. I have one for my TypeScript projects that will go ahead and run the TypeScript checker, so on and so forth. But you need to have at least one that is named main. And they give you kind of a basic one in this case to start with, right? Again, the act of deployment might not be my main one, but for the purposes of our time together, it is, right? So you might have the one that runs your tests as the main one that should go off, so on and so forth, right? You could have one that runs your Cypress tests, one that runs your Jest unit tests, one that does the TypeScript checking, basically everything that you don't want to do manually when you or one of your friends opens up a pull request. So we'll name this one deploy website. One careful thing for us is we don't want to do it on pull requests, right? So this is when should it happen, right? So yeah, anytime we push to main, absolutely. We do want to run the test whenever somebody opens up a pull request against main, but we do not want to deploy the website on a pull request. So this one we will get rid of. So now, whenever we push to main, we want to do the rest of this. Oh, this is kind of cool. You can run it directly from the Actions tab. Sure. OK. So the jobs, we have this idea that we want to deploy. And it needs to run some kind of operating system, so fine. The other part that's given to us for free is that it will use this GitHub action to check out the actual code. Right? This is GitHub setting up an environment, pulling down your code. After this, you can basically run different command line things. Like here, they'll echo hello world. This is their default one. I just hit create. We're not going to use most of this, but this is kind of just showing you the kind of steps, right? So uses is any kind of pre-built action. It turns out that not only does GitHub have some useful ones for us, but also Amazon has one that they make for configuring your AWS CLI, so you can do AWS stuff inside of a GitHub action. So we're going to use this ability to check out the code, but after that, the rest of this is just more demos. They're just echoing a bunch of stuff That's very cool. I'm happy for them. I don't want it. So for us, and again, we have the version of this kind of pre-built, but just to step through all the pieces. So not only are we going to use the GitHub checkout, we will also use the AWS tools as well, right? So we can say, we'll name this piece. We'll actually do that above too. This one will be checkout repository. Then after that, we will configure AWS. So that will be name. This does not get it's a sub-bullet. My live YAML. If live deploying a CDN wasn't dangerous enough, let's live YAML. What could possibly go wrong? So with that, the name of the GitHub action that we want is actually this AWS actions. And it's just, it's open source code. You can go look at it as well, which is configure AWS credentials at v1. OK, so now it will configure that access key and that secret access ID so you can run AWS commands for that new build process user that we made. But we need to tell it where to get that information from, right? We have not put this into GitHub yet. We will do that in a second. But we're going to put it in environment variables. We just basically need to tell this tool what environment variables it should go looking for to plug in these values. So we're going to say, for the configure AWS part, it's going to use this action that AWS has made for us. And we'll say with the AWS access key ID. And then you can interpolate values in here using this syntax. So we'll say secrets dot. And we're going to have to provide this in a second. This is not some magic value. This is like, hey, GitHub workflow, I'm going to provide you something that I'm going to call AWS access key. Go get that encrypted value, right? But that's what you're going to tell AWS is our access key. So we'll go grab that. Then the next one is the AWS secret access key, which we will call AWS secret access key. So that'll be the second value. And then what region? Those are the things when you ran AWS configure before that you pasted in manually. But the whole idea of this build process is to take you out of the picture. So in this case, we will go ahead, and this one will now be AWS region. And you can pass that in as a variable, or you can hard code it in. It is up to you. If you think you're going to reuse it with different values, make it a variable. This is clearly like not necessarily a secret that we need to encrypt, but we could, right? It's up to you. I am not in this case. Mostly just to stick to what I had that I provided you. I'm going to keep it the way I had it. So this is now set to US East 1. Don't actually think there's a duplicate mapping key. I think it's an old error. So we've got that in place. So now that will configure the AWS CLI. That is the next piece. Now before you saw the parts that we deleted were just running bash commands. It was just running echo, right? And we saw that we were able to deploy our application to S3 using the AWS command line. So at this point, all we're doing is pulling that logic that we had the ability to install our dependencies, do npm run build, do that AWS S3 CP, yada, 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 and to push everything else. The one additional command that we're going to issue is creating an invalidation. And again, like if you chose to just set a shorter TTL, that's fine too. I am going to set it out there as well. So at this point, we're going to do another step, which that step will be named, ooh, don't need caps, install modules or dependencies or what have you. And that just say, like, we know how to do that. You can do npm install, but you can also do npm CI, which is a version that will try to cache. It's a very similar version to npm install, but for the purposes optimized for CI/CD pipelines. So we've got that in place, and then we saw before that we needed to build the application. So we'll say build application. And like, could I try to jam them into the same command? I totally could, but then I'm the one going to suffer when I have to debug later, right? So we'll do npm run build. Awesome. And now we want to deploy to S3, right? And that will just run AWS S3. At this point, we'll sync it, which is slightly different. /build S3 : //. Now you could hard code in your bucket. If it's a private repo, that's probably fine because like the bucket is not the same as your secret access key. But like, I don't even really want to, even though I have exposed the name of my bucket over the last like 5 hours, I'm going to pass that in as a variable as well, unlike US East 1. But that's kind of up to you. I don't know how that line got moved. I haven't installed modules. So we've got that in place, and then we'll do secrets. Let's call this one bucket name, bucket ID, whatever, as well. And then finally, we want to create that CloudFront invalidation. Run, and this is going to be AWS CloudFront. So the other one was AWS S3. This is AWS CloudFront. And the command is create invalidation. And then you got to give it a distribution ID. And that will be, in my case, secrets.distribution ID, and then tell it what paths. In my case, I was doing the / just invalidate everything. Awesome. So we've got all that in place. Now you could just invalidate index.html if you wanted to. But if there were images that got built, if it was like a Gatsby project, then maybe that gets a little more nuanced. Like, you can choose to refine this as much as you see fit. For the purposes of just a general use case, I might start very broad, because like thinking you've invalidated things that you haven't could also be somewhat problematic. And this is our workflow in this case. And so we should be able to commit it, commit this new file. Now we have an action. It should run. Now it will theoretically deploy a version of my site that will be mostly the same. So as you kind of, and this will fail. It will fail. Why? I told it to access all these secrets. I never told it what the secrets were. Right? So I'm going to add in the secrets, and then we're going to take a quick break. And your job is to change something about the page. Change it from pink to yellow. I don't change it from pink back to indigo. Do whatever you want. Change it, and then we will kind of deploy it and see that our process works. Yeah, like I said, credentials could not be loaded. So let's put that in, and then we'll go ahead and we will adjust that and send it along. So for the settings, for the repo, you go to this tab here called Secrets. And there are no secrets in this repository. We're all amongst friends here currently. You can go add the secrets. The ones we need to add are the AWS access key, basically the ones that we call out in that build process itself. We're going to take a quick break to do it so I'm not live streaming my access key all over the place. But we want to add in the AWS access key, the AWS secret key, the bucket ID, and then the distribution ID. Cool. So let's take about 5 minutes, and we'll do that. And then we'll see if and try to, after you have it in place, change your code, change it to something else, change a word in it. I don't care what you do. Just verify that it works the way you think it's going to. I plugged in all my secrets one at a time in front of everyone in the room. I think I was fast enough. If not, I take no responsibility for anything. So with that in place, I also made the changes, changing all of the pink to yellow. So we'll go ahead and I have no idea what this will look like. But like, well, that wasn't going to win me any graphic design awards anyway, so I think we're okay. So I will push that up to GitHub, which will kick off the build process itself. So we can see once we have, it's not totally up yet, but once that goes up, it will run our process, which again, just doing the same things that we did by hand before. It will go ahead, it will build all the assets, it'll install the dependencies, then it will build the assets, then it will sync them up with our S3 bucket, and then it will tell CloudFront to clear the cache and get ready for and start serving out the new hotness of my yellow website as opposed to my pink, formerly indigo website. So let's check this out. It's slow on the pushing for some reason. I don't seem to be able to cancel that. But I'll show you the last run that I did as well. We kind of see all the steps going through. The naming them is super helpful if you ever want to figure out what went wrong, right? If you had a bunch of runs in there, right, or all together, then you have to go triage it yourself. But here you would actually see what happened. You can see that it created the invalidation for CloudFront, which I can also verify in CloudFront itself, as well as deploying everything, just like we ran it from the command line. But now I never have to run it from the command line again. Anytime a commit makes it into main, it will automatically get deployed. I don't have to think about it anymore. That does mean you have to be somewhat careful in this particular use case about what you merge into main, right? Like whether you have release branches or you can do it on other ways. We just did the simple one because it's not a workshop on GitHub Actions. It's a workshop on just automating this piece of the pipeline for ourselves. Go back to my actions. We can see that it's going to go through the same process. We basically know how that should play out, assuming that my yellow got in there and I didn't mess up that last git dance. It will go through all the steps that we saw earlier. And at that point, like we now have a like 90% of the way there version of what we built for a company whose product was making some amount of money that I probably can't disclose out loud. But worth it, right? And so we've built basically the similar process